Welcome to the Focused Professional Podcast, sponsored by the Society of Photographers. I'm your host, Joe Lenton, and this is episode 15. Welcome to the Focused Professional Podcast. Today we have Terry Donnelly with us. He is a master photographer with the Society of Photographers, a Rotolight Master of Light, a Sony ambassador. He's won over 250 international awards, and he was a fellow team member for Team GB for the World Photographic Cup. Great to have you here, Terry.
Hey, great to be here. Nice to see you. Nice to hear from you, Joe.
Yeah, appreciate you coming onto the podcast and having a little bit of a chat with us about your photography. It's always been interesting to talk to you, and at the conventions we often don't get as much time as we might like. So thank you very much for taking some time out this morning.
You're welcome, Joe. Thank you for inviting me along.
Terry's work I've been keeping an eye on for quite a few years, and he seems to be one of those that's can switch genres and still do equally as well, which is exactly the opposite, of what I was told when I was starting out. You know, focus on one thing, get yourself sorted in one genre and just do that. Don't try and do lots of things. You need to specialize. So, Terry, how have you made that work?
Well, same as you, Joe. I've always been told, even up to a few years ago, you're okay shooting this, that and the other, but you've got to focus on one genre to get really good at it. And I've always resisted it because, to me, it never made sense, because there's such a crossover between genres in terms of skill set that surely if you shoot different genres and you're using that crossover skill set, that's going to give you a better understanding and better knowledge and of what you're shooting, and that's got to roll over into your favorite genre, if you like. I don't think you need to try to be an expert in all the genres, but you certainly should be shooting different genres because it will strengthen that skill set.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, thankfully, your work kind of gave me that little bit of inspiration and kind of permission, if you like, to do that myself. Because so many people telling me, "Oh no, you've got to specialize. You've got to pick your thing. Are you going to do landscapes? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do the other?" And I think that even once you have found perhaps a professional niche, still shooting those other genres just helps you to keep sharp on your camera skills, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. And, there's so much of a rollover. If you're shooting perhaps wildlife, birds in flight, that rolls over into sport. You're using long lenses. You're getting a better understanding of shutter speeds and the effects of shutter speed. And it does roll over into each other. But I would caveat that as well, Joe, in that terms that for a working professional, although you can shoot different genres, for marketing reasons, really, you should focus in on the type of work that you want to attract, really. So if you're looking for work in, the hotel industry or architectural work, that's what you should show. And if you think about it, if you spring a leak in your house, you need a plumber. You're not going to go online and necessarily look for an all-round builder. You're going to look for a plumber. And I think that's the same in photography. So in terms of attracting the work, what you want to get, you should show the type of work, what you're wishing to attract. And that does need to focus down possibly into one genre. So that's the only caveat. And I think that gets confused really with doing that and shooting different genres.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for personal projects and to keep your skills sharp, doing different things can be very helpful. And most of what I do tends to be product work, but at the same time, in the summertime, might grab the macro lens and pop out and get some butterflies and bugs in the garden,
Yeah, definitely. But if you look at wedding photography, you've got documentary, portraiture, fine art, you've got creative work, some macro, architectural considerations, if you're shooting big wide shots, landscape considerations if you're shooting outside. And if you look at the likes of, Jerry Jonas, Sanjay, Scott Johnson, they're all different in the style, but you can see that they are shooting a multidisciplinary photography.
Yeah.
There's so much in there what they do. But once you start really paying attention to it, and it's the same for sport. It's documentary media, can be portraiture, you can be creative. You've got that architectural element as well. If you're shooting wide pictures of inside the stadium, it's all, but all that skill set comes in from different genres to combine. And I think it's very powerful. I think 100% people should really force themselves to shoot different genres.
So what would you say you shoot most of these days professionally?
Do you know what, Joe? It changes so much. I could have a heavy week of sport, and then I could roll on. I could have a heavy week of doing headshots and corporate identity work. It just changes week to week, and I couldn't really tell you exactly what I shoot most of. It's very, very fluid, and it's not a bad thing, because if some work dies off slightly for whatever reason, for a change in season, change in weather, anything can affect the type of work what I get in. Usually, I can buffer that up and fill that in with other types of work as well. So, for me personally, that works very well, being able to work across the different genres.
Yeah, it's like I was talking to Martina Varenfeld, and she, of course, is known for her fine art portraiture, but she's also sort of diversifying into business headshots and creating something which is sort of related to her skill set, but slightly different, and enables her to go with the ebbs and flows of the market. So having that extra genre available to you professionally just keeps the income going, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't see any reason why a photographer would not want to shoot different genres. And it's great for learning as well. It's great for personal development and pushing yourself forward.
Yeah, I'd like just to have a quick chat about a couple of the genres that I know you do. So sports and architecture, which on the face of things, you could look at that and think you couldn't get much more different. One tends to be on a tripod, slow, methodical, and the other one, it's, fast autofocus. Because architectural work often is done with tilt shift lenses, where of course there is no autofocus. And so it makes me wonder then, do they have a totally separate skill set in your mind, or do you see much overlap between them?
I suppose photography is photography at the end of the day. And we have a set standard of what we're trying to achieve. So they need to be technically good. We also need to capture that wow factor where we can as well. So on that basis, I think all photography genres are pretty much similar. Where it differs, I suppose, is in terms of maybe the equipment and the style of image what you're shooting. So you're quite right, sport lives or dies by shutter speed, whether you're looking to freeze action, whether you're looking to blur action. It's all about the shutter speed with sport.
Yeah.
And there's certain nuances attached to that as well. So I suppose you've really got to understand your sport. You've got to be able to anticipate the sport, because a lot of the breaks in play, you need to know where they're going so you can get yourself ready to capture them moments, because they are fleeting moments. And if you miss it, it's gone. You can't replay it. Architecturally, photography is different in that it is more relaxed. You can maybe sit back and have a little bit more time, be a little bit more considered. Both genres need a keen eye for detail, without doubt. So you've got to understand light properties and also have the ability to control. But I suppose the key difference would be, Joe, that in sporting events, you're very much in an uncontrolled environment, and you have to deal with whatever comes your way in terms of weather, your position you're allocated to shoot, the way the sun's shining, the direction of the light, whether it's harsh, whether you've got no light, whether it's raining. Architecturally, you can be a little bit more considered and perhaps, hopefully, have more of a controlled environment.
So you have a place allocated for you when you're in a stadium normally. You don't get to choose which end you're going or whereabouts you're going to position yourself.
Very much depends on the stadium and also the level of the game. So, certainly for European games and Premiership games, you will be allocated a position. And it's marked out. So when you get there, you'll get your badge and it'll have the mark on where your allocated slot is. But maybe for rugby league, that's slightly different. You can go in and you can pretty much pick where you want to go within reason. Still needs to be behind the sticks, but you can, you can move around a bit more. You've got a bit more leeway to select where you want to sit. But and architectural photography as well. I just think that perhaps you just need that little bit of more understanding as you do in sport where you're anticipating, but for architectural photography, you need to be a little bit more aware and pay a little bit more attention to detail. And one of the biggest things, what you touched on, was the ability to control lens distortion. So a tilt shift lens is always preferable to use for those type of shoots. You tend to see a lot of people shooting architectural work and they just go for a wide angle and a fit in all type shot.
Yeah.
But the distortion towards the lens edge just really gives that away.
Absolutely does, yes. Yeah.
You'll see maybe a 1 meter door section grow to like, it looks like 3 meters by the time it's touching the edge of the lens. So it's a big thing. The tilt shift lenses are brilliant for controlling that. And I'll normally use a tilt shift in those circumstances.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't want them for a sports match. A bit too slow and awkward for that. But are you a rugby and football fan then? Is that how you got into doing more of the rugby and the football? Are those the sports that you keenly follow?
Yeah, I do follow football, quite a lot of football. And certainly rugby league, because up north it's rugby league, down south it's rugby union. So we have a lot of teams up in the northwest and in the Midlands, in Yorkshire. So
there's a huge concentration around the Bradford Leeds area, isn't there? There's loads of teams in there, at Wigan and so on, and St Helens, and yeah,
definitely. Well, certainly in the northwest, St Helens, Wigan, Leigh, Warrington, Salford. So we've got 5 clubs in a really close nucleus within like maybe 45 minutes driving distance for me. So they're the ones I tend to concentrate on.
So for people who are thinking of trying to get into sports photography, is it something where you need to be a member of something like the National Union of Journalists? Is it something where you need to have a way of getting a pass in there? What's the sort of basic way into doing that kind of thing? Would you start more at grassroots level and wait till you get noticed?
I think you've got to start at grassroots because you've got to learn the trade. You've got to understand what's required and you've got to have a certain skill level. Now, my own personal view on this, Joe, is that to shoot Premier League football, Super League rugby, I think you're very privileged to be able to shoot that level of sport. And I think it absolutely demands respect in terms of the quality of the image you put out. And you can only really get that by starting at grassroots and learning the ropes and growing yourself as a sports photographer. Of course, we have the other element to it as well, that when you get into top flight sports, it then becomes very much a pressure cooker in some respects, where you are required to file the images during match play as well. So while the game is on, you will be editing images, you'll be keyword and captioning and FTPing them off during gameplay. And that is a whole different skill level above being able to shoot. So unless you're really competent at shooting sports, you're not going to cope with the other side of it either. In terms of accreditation, it's usually a two-step process. So the first thing is that you would need to be accredited to, for instance, the Rugby Football League. So you have to apply to them. And they want certain things like copies of your insurance, copies of X amount of sales you've done in the previous season. And then they will issue a badge. Once you've got the badge, you then have a secondary accreditation process where you have to apply to individual clubs to attend. So if you want to attend St Helens on a Saturday against, Wigan, for argument's sake, you will need to apply to the host club and say, I'd like to attend. These are my accreditation details, blah, 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 blah. And then it's up to them whether they let you in to the stadium. So it's a two-step process, similar for the football as well.
Yeah, so that you've really got to work at it and get that portfolio in, get used to selling images to the local papers before you're going to work at any kind of serious national level then.
Yeah, because space is restricted. So if you're not actively selling images, there's no point in you being there. That's the reason why they allow you access. They want to see their pictures going out in the red tops nationally, the local press. And it's all good for them. It's promoting the league as well.
Yeah, I think it's important that people realise about that, getting the images out during the game as well, because there's, social media. They want to put out an image straight after a goal of a player celebrating the goal, don't they? It's all very, very quick. You can't be one of these photographers who goes, well, I'll shoot in RAW, I'll take it home, I'll have a little bit of a fiddle with it, and then I'll send it off as a JPEG, because you think, well, by that time, the papers have bought everything they want.
Yeah, it's all over by then. Generally, a rule of thumb: if you photograph a goal and the celebration straight after that, you'll want to get them images filed off certainly within 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's quick. So for you, is that? Do you prefer that kind of fast-paced environment? Because we were talking earlier about the architecture as being a bit more slow and methodical. Do you prefer one over the other, or do you just enjoy both?
I enjoy both, really, Joe. There's nothing like the adrenaline rush at a really big football match. That can be really exciting. But equally, I enjoy being really particular. I've been called particular quite a few times by people. Just fussing an image to get it just absolutely the best it can be before I press the shutter. I enjoy that side of it as well. So yeah, I enjoy both. I just love taking pictures, Joe. I suppose the bottom line is, and I think that's 99% of us get into photography because we enjoy it, and that's never left me. I still look forward to going out and doing the next shoot, whatever it is. Just enjoy it so much.
So you're not somebody who relies on their own personal projects to keep the enjoyment. You actually get the enjoyment from the paid jobs as well.
Yeah. I always try to. I mean, personal projects have been really useful for me over the years. And for probably the last 18 months, I've not really done any. But I am returning to it. I've got one which I'm about to start, which is going to be something a bit different.
I don't doubt that. I mean, you're certainly looking back at your various fellowship panels. We've got London Underground, we've got flying squirrels, we've got sort of composites of rather crazy looking people in rather weird looking backgrounds. There's an awful lot of different things going on there.
Yeah, but I think you've just got to go with whatever you enjoy at that time, Joe. And sometimes I get an idea in my mind, and I just try to see if I can convert that into reality in front of the camera. But yeah, personal projects are so powerful. They really are. If you can think of them really as a self-development training exercise, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think they can give you skills and improve your existing skill set so much. A lot of photography is about problem solving. We're presented with a particular problem where we haven't got enough light, or we don't know how to perhaps get a narrative into an image, or whatever it is. But shooting personal projects, you can spend your time and try different solutions and see what works best. And that naturally rolls across. Once you accomplish that or learn how to achieve something, that will always be there for you. You can always call back on that from your skill set. So I think they're really, really powerful. I'd recommend that everybody, push themselves a little bit to get involved in personal projects.
Definitely. I'd certainly echo that sentiment. So if we look at one of your recent projects, the fellowship panel that you did of the squirrels in the garden, how did that emerge? Was it because you happened to have access to them? Was it something that you were already passionate about? Could you tell us a little bit about how you got into doing that as a project?
Oh, Joe, how long have you got on this podcast? I'll try and be concise with this. I'd say both, really.
Mm-hmm.
I am very pro animal rights, and that's a big part. Any living animal, wildlife, I think we've got to treat them with the utmost respect and look after them where we can. But also, we moved house in 2016, and the house what we moved to had a colony of red squirrels living between the gardens and the mature trees. And they would drop into the garden every now and again. So I set myself a task, really, a plan to try and get better pictures of them, because they were always quite hidden in the tree canopy, or very skittish. If they saw any movement, they were away. They were very difficult to photograph in a rural location. Unless you can imagine, people have got 1 in 4 households have got a cat.
Yeah.
So, they've got a predator not too far away. People have dogs, so they don't like to stick around too much. So it says about bringing them into the garden. And I've done loads of presentations of how we achieved this, but it took me quite a long time. I built a framework, and in the end, I had them coming onto a frame, interacting with different objects, musical instruments, sitting in cars. I built an assault course for them, so I could photograph them jumping through the air, and that was the big thing. But I'll tell you what happened, Joe. As I got more into the species itself, I learnt more and more about them. Realization, really, just how at risk they are in terms of extinction in England. Current estimates are 35,000 red squirrels left in England, and
I've never seen one in the wild in the UK. I've never actually seen one. I've only ever seen it in captivity or in Europe, in Germany.
Yeah,
I've never seen a red squirrel. I see plenty of greys, but I've never seen a red squirrel here.
Yeah, it's shameful, Joe. It really is. We've gone from like over 4 million down to 35,000. And when you look at the reasons why, we've got habitat change. The houses getting built and habitats getting destroyed. Roadkill, certainly in locations where I live. But the biggest killer to them is squirrel pox, which was carried by the grey squirrel. Grey squirrel carry that virus, and it has no ill effect on the grey squirrel, but it's deadly to a red, and it'll kill a red squirrel within 2 weeks, and it's a cruel, it's a painful death, and it will run right through a colony. I lost a colony of red squirrels actually in November. I lost about 18 of them over a 3-week period through squirrel pox.
Wow.
It's
quite something.
It's deadly. So I've been on a bit of a campaign with it, really, raising awareness, and we've done that. We've featured on BBC News, ITV News. We've been on ITV, national broadcasts. At the request of the Wildlife Trust, I filmed with BBC Earth 18 months ago, so that's gone out now on their YouTube. We've done national newspaper campaigns, all with looking to raise awareness about the dangers of the grey squirrel in terms of the damage they do to the ecological system. That they're actually, not many people are aware of this, but the grey squirrel is listed in the top 10 most damaging non-native invasive species in the world, not in England, in the world.
That's really quite something. And I guess with the photography you were doing, you probably got to understand the behavior of the squirrels that little bit better than just the casual observer, because you're spending that bit more time with them and creating an environment and testing. I guess when you were putting the environment together to draw them into the garden, there were probably some things that worked, some things that didn't, and you get to know and understand, your subject from a photographic point of view there as well.
Yeah, it is, Joe. I mean, it's all, wildlife photography is all about observing behaviour, learning the behaviour of the animal, and then influencing the behaviour of the animal. But I've got to know them quite well, probably a little bit too geeky, to be honest. And 6 main personalities.
Can you be too geeky?
Yeah,
I like geeky. I think geeky's good.
Yeah. So 6 main personality traits in a red squirrel. They can be left-handed or right-handed. Just so much about them, and each one is an individual, and each one has got its own, its own story, its own life, and it's just so sad to be losing them. It really is. But we'll keep on. I mean, I've been in touch with HRH King Charles as well over it. I've made a lot of suggestions to him, because I did an awful lot of work, particularly during the lockdown. He very kindly wrote back to me, and he's given me a commitment to do what he can. When he can. So, photography is fantastic for breaking down barriers. It will open doors and allow you to reach people who you would never come in touch with. But I'll put shorts on the red squirrel story, because you'll be on till tonight, and I'll still be rambling on about them.
Yeah, it's great that things come out of a passion like that, and that also the images have got that kind of educational sort of documentary kind of value to them. As difficult as though they might be to see, unwell animals, you think it's part of the role of a photographer is that sort of persuasion. So it's like with advertising images, you're there to try and make someone want something for whatever reason. You know, if it's a beer, you want to make them feel thirsty and want to drink it. And so as photographers, we can influence people's emotions. We can influence what people do, how they react. And there are various different ways of doing it. And you've found a particular way there, partly with the red squirrels, but also with the air ambulance as well.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think we're very privileged as photographers these days, Joe. I mean, the equipment, what we have access to is just unbelievable. You would never have thought 10 years ago, the quality of the cameras these days and, the feature sets they have on them. They're absolutely amazing what we can do. And we're also privileged in this time frame, what we live in as well, for the opportunities we get. And I think everybody has, a duty really to pay back where they can and to make a difference with the photography. Whether that's it doesn't matter what level it's at, but if we can make a difference to somebody's life, or to wildlife by taking some pictures, I think 100% that's what we should be looking to do. And that it's, as you rightly say, it's important as well. We can affect the change through taking pictures, as crazy as that may sound, but we really can.
Yeah, I think sometimes you get these little arguments among photographers about doing work sort of for free and that. And I think that from the way I tend to look at it is if you've got something you're passionate about that you want people to know about, that you want to share the message about, often there isn't the money for these organizations to do that. So you can actually choose to play your part by doing the pictures. I think there's a very big difference between that and doing it for free in order to try and get some exposure, to try and get your foot in the door. I think that's a very different kind of use of your time, really.
Yeah, I think giving back is something we should all do, and that is certainly different from somebody perhaps who goes into a professional environment and starts causing havoc with pricing.
Yes,
shall we say? That's completely different. And I think in a professional environment, you've got to respect yourself and you've got to respect the work and you've got to respect your clients as well. And you must charge accordingly for that type of work. And the issue is that if you don't, then that work will soon disappear from a chargeable point of view for everyone. So, they have to be a balance. Everything what you do does have a value. If somebody wants to use it, it certainly has a value as well. So you should always charge accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. Photographers need to help maintain their own industry really there, and just cutting off your nose to spite your face if you're not careful, I think.
Absolutely spot on, Joe.
So whether that comes down to the actual sort of shoot fee or licensing things, it's sometimes people are tempted they'll get contacted by somebody who wants to publish a book or somebody who wants to do something in a magazine. Oh, can I have your image? And you think, make sure you do think about a licensing fee for those things. Don't just go, oh, I get to be in that magazine or that newspaper. Here, yeah, have it.
Yeah.
All too often people do.
Yeah, I don't do it, Joe. I just won't do it. I mean, I got contacted not long ago. Somebody wanted to use a series of images. So I asked them what the budget was. And they said, oh, we haven't got a budget. We're only a small company. And you're like, oh, well, you'll have to find a budget. So they found a budget. And I worked out a deal for them. And they still didn't buy it. They just wanted 3 images. But I'm sure somebody somewhere else will oblige them.
Yeah, that's sometimes the problem, isn't it? There's always somebody that will. Yeah, there we go. That's another one we could talk about till the cows come home, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah. Here all week.
So you're clearly somebody who's quite passionate about your photography and you've got passionate values in various areas of your life. When you're actually running your photography business, would you say you bring your values into that? Is that something that you feel you can do when you're running a business, a values-based business?
Yeah, I think you've got to be, you've got to keep your values and you've got to keep your standards in business. I try to treat every single job as if the client is, a close member of my family or a close friend, and I make sure they're well looked after, fully understand the brief. I never try to upsell. It's something I always avoid doing. I'll always make sure I give a a clear quotation, and if it's accepted, if I've made a mistake, well, I did make a mistake not long ago, actually. I ended up doing probably 30% more work than I was quoted for, but when I look back at it, it was down to me, so I just swallowed that myself. I didn't bother the clients over it. But I think your standards, you have to be absolutely upfront and honest with everything what you do, and do your absolute best for the client. And I think that's the only way to do it. I won't mention the building fraternity, who tends to work slightly differently. But you've just got to be straight with people, Joe. You've got to be right with them. And if you're right with other people, generally, they come back and are right with you as well.
Yeah, I think so too. So, what would you say motivates you as a business photographer, as a commercial sort of photographer? What is it about the job that makes you keep doing it? Is it the enjoyment of it, or are you motivated by the money, or what sort of things get you out of bed in the morning?
Love of photography, Joe. First and foremost, I love doing it. I love a challenge. I suffer with the imposter syndrome a lot of the time, and I love doing things what I think I can't do. So it's that challenge. It's going out. Excuse me. It's going out, going on location, maybe in a new environment, working a solution as to what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. Making sure we're covering the brief, and I just love all that part of it. And then when you get over the obstacles and you start shooting and the images are coming into the camera and you're happy with them, there's no better feeling, in my opinion. And that's first and foremost what drives me. Obviously, the financial part of that is important as well. But I would say that is, I don't jump out of bed in the morning saying, oh, I'm going to get this money today or that money. I jump out of bed in the morning and go, great, I'm going to photograph this today and I can't wait to get there. And I'm going to try different angles and maybe I'll light it slightly differently this time. And it's all that part of it that drives me.
Yeah, I suppose you've got a huge number of different awards and qualifications and things like that as well. Is that something which is an important part of your motivation? I mean, for me, sometimes it's actually kind of part of trying to keep the imposter syndrome at bay. I almost feel that need for some kind of validation that I can still do it, which is kind of sad in a way, but that's part of it for me.
Totally agree with you. I love bashing the imposter syndrome over the head with an award, saying, now get away from me.
Yeah.
I need structure, Joe. I love having structure. Competitions give me structure. So the monthly competitions with the societies, I love entering those. And I know at the end of the month, I've got to sit down, I've got to have a look through what I've shot that month, see what I think is of a standard that's worthy of an entry, then look at the image again critically, look from a judge's perspective. Is there any distractions in there? Is there anything I've missed? And I love that structure part of it. But certainly on awards, if somebody comes back to you and says, oh, you've got a HC this month, and you're like, amazing, somebody's bought in to, the vision and the image, what you supplied. And it's all verification, really, to say, yeah, you're on the right path. And that's why I think competitions are so important. Self-projects are a bit like that as well, but with a self-project, you haven't got somebody giving you that confirmation at the end of it, only yourself. But I think competitions really, really important. And, the job what Terry Jones does with the societies, it's really is on another level. And
I agree, yeah.
It always encourage people to be in their competitions, always. And you never, if you think about it this way, Joe, you're never in competition with anybody else when you're at a photography competition. You're only in competition with yourself to do better than what you did the previous month.
Yeah. I think that's one of the good things about having awards that are set at, like, effectively a particular score, a standard. It's not that you if you meet that standard, it's not that you might get pushed off if there are too many others. Is if everybody meets that standard, then everybody gets the award. If only one person meets the highly commended, and there might be no golds that month. That's just how it is. It's the standard is there, the benchmark is there, and it's clear what you're aiming for. It's not sort of this month you're 5th or 10th or 25th or something like that. It is much, much clearer to understand the standard, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And that's important as well. If you're judging or you're being judged against a set standard, then you know roughly where you are. Obviously, that changes, at convention where amateurs start going up against each other then in the finals to see who's getting the top spot. But having that standard to be judged against, I think, that's really good. That, and as you quite rightly say, if you were coming 12th or 15th and that changed on how many people entered that month, they wouldn't have the same credibility, in my opinion, of what it is.
So you've also trained as a judge and done quite a lot of judging as well with the societies and elsewhere too. How do you think that's changed you as a photographer?
I think it's given me a much keener eye, and there's also given me additional exposure to different genres and different levels of photography, which, you may not have seen previous if you wasn't judging. And I think it makes a huge difference understanding the process. I mean, my judging started back in 2012. I started with the Lancashire and Cheshire Photographic Union, which is the umbrella for all the camera clubs in the Northwest, Umbrella Society.
Right.
I went through the judging school, if you like, and then I was a junior judge for a while until I was upgraded, and then I got listed on the PAGB judging list, which is the UK umbrella over all the different regions. So that's the highest level of judging in that arena. And then I think it was, gosh, how long ago I did the societies one with Terry. And I mean, that was different in a lot of ways, but different in a good way, if that makes sense. And it was very, very rigorous. I learned an awful lot of judging school. And again, I'd recommend anyone to do that if they're interested in becoming a judge or they just want to understand more how people assess images. And I think it was, it's here actually, I made the notes. March 2019, I attended judging school. Wow, 5 years already. That's unbelievable how quick the time goes. But I've enjoyed the society's judging. I'm actively judging in the monthlies. I also do assessments of qualification panels. And obviously a convention, it's always, a really great event to be involved in and a privilege to be involved in also. But tightly controlled by Terry. She manages the standards so well in that. And she's she is the most tuned in person in terms of judging and controlling judges I've ever come across. She does an amazing job. But yeah, it's a big privilege involved in that show.
I think you can know that the standards are maintained well. It's not like you got to worry about sort of qualification creep or something. Oh, it's becoming easier or anything like that. It's you know that you get a qualification and it's got lasting value.
Yeah, it is. And you get a qualification, Joe, or if you win, you win an award in the monthlies or convention, you've earned that. You should be really proud of the fact that you've achieved that because, a lot of people, don't get to actually do that. So you've worked hard, you've achieved it, you own it, and you should be proud of it.
Definitely, yeah. And it's something that can then lead on to potentially with some clients, it can be a reassurance when they book you, when they can see that you've got various qualifications, when you've won awards. And particularly in your case, I guess it's also led on to becoming like a brand ambassador for one or two companies. So what actually is a brand ambassador? What do you actually have to do? I suppose a lot of people see them about, but they don't necessarily know what it involves.
Yeah, so being an ambassador, again, it's an absolute privilege and, not something to take for granted, but it's a multi-skilled role, really. You're there to support the brand, and you do that in various ways. You could be supplying images for articles, for product launches. I mean, one of the most exciting things I get to do is I get equipment pre-release and I get to play with it before anybody even knows it's coming out. And that's always that's always big fun, that.
I can imagine, but I suppose the issue you've got there is that you haven't actually got the raw processing capabilities in some of your image software because it's so new.
Yeah, that's right. So in that instant, what I would do is I would shoot in JPEG and RAW, and I mean the JPEGs out of the cameras these days are just outstanding. They really are. And then I'd maybe look at the RAWs later on as the RAW processing software becomes available. But it's a multi-skilled role, attending trade events, TPS, being able to speak about the equipment, about your photography. It really is it's an honour, really, Joe, to be able to do that. And unbelievably, and I've been doing it with Sony since 2017. So
wow,
I think that's quite a long stretch. Rotolight was 2017 as well. And Photo Speed, I came on a bit later with Photo Speed. But 3 great brands, and they make, they have great products, and it's as I say, it's a privilege, really, to be able to be involved with them at that level.
I suppose at these photography shows and that, you're basically sort of dashing between one stand and another and don't get to see much of else of what's going on then, representing your various companies like that.
Yeah, it can be. I was ping-ponging between Sony and Rotolight at TPS this year. But it's great fun, keeps you busy. You don't get to see much of the show, to be honest, when you're doing that, but
no,
it is what it is at the end of the day. And it's something I enjoy doing. Meeting people, advising people, and I can advise people from a non-sales point of view. So, if somebody comes to me and they say, "Oh, I'm thinking of getting this camera," and I'll sit them down and say, "What are your priorities? What are you looking for? What are your benefits?" And then you can show them images, and you can share with you the way I do things. I mean, quite commonly I'll share my camera settings as well. I'll just download it onto an SD card and send it to people, so you can set the cameras up the same as me and work the same way as me for a while till they get into the system, and then they can start customizing their own workflow from there on in. But I enjoy that part of it. It's not just from a sales point of view with people who've got a kit already and perhaps not getting the best out of it. I had one person actually only last week who was having problems with focus. It was a one setting on the camera which he'd overlooked. So it's great to be able to get people up to speed with the kit. Same with the lighting, and the prints.
Definitely, and sometimes when you're teaching, it is just a really small thing. I did a beginners workshop for a group a few years back, and within the first 5 minutes, someone said, "Oh, great, that's it! I've got what I need almost." And it was something. You wouldn't believe it. It was the little diopter wheel.
Yeah, I won't believe it.
So they were looking there, they say, "I got this camera, but every time I look through, everything's all blurry, and sometimes it seems to be okay when you look at the actual photo, and sometimes it's not." And then you say, "Well, just rotate that wheel round there a little bit." Oh, fantastic. And for them, they were so enthused to go out and then take photos for the rest of the session, just for one little thing. And it's really nice when you've got those moments of, with people who are new to the kit, with people who are new to various techniques. It's lovely seeing them being able to enjoy themselves and open up a new world of creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're quite right. It's often the small things which is, they've overlooked or they've not realised. But I think any event, Joe, if somebody, if I run an event and there's 20 people on it, if one person gets one thing out of that, I'm happy. Because it can completely change their photography.
Yeah.
A couple of years back at TPS, I'll give you 2 examples. We had one guy who came, he's visually impaired, and he said he was packing in photography because of this and that, and I set his camera up for him. Absolutely fail safe how the focus will, using all the focus points, explained the way the system works. And he left happy, spent near enough an hour with that guy. Another chap had a stroke and he was struggling holding the camera, so we went through the various different options. And just spend a little bit of time with somebody, it can totally change their photography and their enjoyment ongoing. So you invest a little bit of time with somebody, long term, they're getting so much enjoyment from it. And I really enjoyed that type of issue, not an issue, but that type of challenge, really. Helping people, I think, is what, as I mentioned before, is something we all should do whenever we can. But yeah, I absolutely love that. When we get somebody coming in with an issue, we send them away happy. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, lifts everybody up doing that kind of thing. You feel great for being able to help somebody, and the other person is re-enthused for their hobby and so on. I think for me the training and also the judging, giving back like that, it's like when you get to write a report on somebody's qualification, for example, getting to give them that kind of detailed feedback. It's actually really quite satisfying. It's not a chore by any means.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. I mean, I'm lucky to be involved in the mentoring as well with the societies, and it's the first report is usually a fair bit in it, shall we say?
Yes,
for some people.
Yes,
in a nice way though, directing them. But there's nothing better than seeing a second mentoring request come in from the same person, and you see that they've rolled in what you've been saying to them into the photography. As you quite rightly say, it's so satisfying for that. And, it makes all the difference. It makes all the hard work doing the reports worthwhile.
It certainly does. Yeah. So you've been involved in all sorts of different aspects of the photography industry. And all the awards and things you've won and qualifications and so on. Do you still have any particular ambitions for your photography? Any landmarks you want to reach?
Yeah, I do actually. One of the ones I've got, well, I've got a few, Joe. I won't share them all, but certainly in terms, because we're both involved with the societies, one of my ambitions is to win that competition outright, that convention. That is something I just love to do, and I've always wanted to do it. I've come close a few times. I came second overall in 2016.
Yeah.
And then I came third overall in 2020.
Oh, yeah, it's close.
Yeah. Now that's a 4-year cycle. That I might be lucky this year, but I don't think so. But yeah, I've always got targets. I think if you don't have targets, you'll slide backwards. I've always what I want to achieve. There's certain images I want to achieve as well. Certainly in terms of sport, which I've got in my mind, and I know they're there for me, but they'll only happen when external conditions align. So yeah, 100%. I've got a lot of stuff which I want to achieve yet, but the societies one is one definitely. I've not enjoyed the same level of success I've had previously, certainly over the last, I'd say 18 months or so. But 18 months or so, but yeah, I need to up my game a little bit if I'm going to do that.
Well, we've got all these Swedes and all these Aussies coming in. I mean, they're taking all the awards. The Brits have to fight back.
Yeah, we are. We're going to have to up our game. But I suppose, like, getting back to your question, ambitions in photography still. The biggest one and the most important one, which I've got, is to have an effect in certain areas, certainly in red squirrel conservation and also in the air ambulance world as well. And, that's the most important factor for me, that, making the occasional great picture and being involved, taking pictures is all well and good. But if you can affect for a cause, for the betterment of other people or, for wildlife, I think that's my biggest ambition. And that's where I'd really like to be and to push forward for. Wildlife doesn't have a voice. We've got to speak for them. Words only go so far. We can do much more with pictures. We can reach out more. If I can help with the funding requirements of the air ambulance services as well, that's massive. And they're my two ambitions, which are ongoing, which are worth more to me than any award or, any source of success in other areas. But that's my main thing, really. They're my ambitions.
Yeah. So when you're working with like the air ambulance, how does that work? Do you kind of tag along and you figure out your way of telling the story, or do they give you a brief that they want you to follow?
Normally, they will give me a shot list
Hmm.
of ideas, which is not strict. They just say, we'd actually like to have this type of image because we don't have it at the moment. Now, I was there last week on the shot list. I think there was about 9 or 10 shots on the list, which I just rolled into what I was doing. But I've got a certain level of trust between us, so they pretty much let me go at it, really.
Mm.
I mean, this last photo essay, it was about highlighting the use of the critical care doctors now on the cruise more and more. So 40% of the missions attended in the first quarter had a critical care doctor with them. Now that has additional costs. Also, fuel has had a massive impact on the cost of the service. And currently, Joe, it costs £4.5 million to run the service each year.
And is that the one in your area? That's not nationally, presumably. That's then multiplied up around the country as well, is it?
Yeah. Well, this is in Wiltshire, so I'm working with Wiltshire Air Ambulance at the moment. So just for that one region, Wiltshire, the county, 4.5 million to run the service, and that is a huge amount of money. It's eye-watering amount of money. That equates to over £12,000 per day.
That's huge, isn't it? And as I say, you've got this multiplied across the country in so many different ways. And it's one of those things where you hope you'll never need to rely on it. But when you do, boy, does it make a difference to people. They're saving lives, aren't they?
Yeah, makes a huge difference. I mean, first quarter, they had 329 missions over the first 3 months. Now, if we break that down, that equates to £3,400 per mission. Now, when we look at the top line, the 4.5 million, it's a huge amount of money. But when you break it down to 3,400 per mission, that's less than £3,500 to go and save somebody's life, somebody's mum, somebody's dad, daughter, son. It's money well spent. But they don't. All the air ambulances across the country, they don't receive any direct funding from the government. So they have to raise the money themselves. They all have a charity arm. And that comes from donations, running their own lottery, charity shops, people doing events. But that money has to be kept coming in. And part of what I do with them is to highlight that funding need. And it's important because as people, we get used to things, we get used to having internet, we get used to having electricity, and it all gets took for granted. We see maybe an air ambulance flying above, and we just think it just happens. But it doesn't. It needs to be funded and it needs to be supported. And that's what my photo essays are primarily are for, to do that.
Yeah, I mean, with those kind of services, it's so important that the visuals are professional, because it's the way our minds work. When we look at sort of amateur sort of snaps of things in a context like that, for us to then consider giving reasonable amounts of money to a charity, it's like with when we shop. If the images don't look quite right, there's that kind of dissonance in our mind that makes us wonder, is it worth it, is it not? So for charities that do those jobs, they rely on having good images. And it's one of those things where if you've got a photographer who's passionate about it and you can provide that for them, it makes a huge difference when they're turning up at a fair and they've got big print of a quality image behind them, not just a grubby little flyer with a few things that someone took on their mobile. I mean, the takings that they're likely to get by comparison are going to be just chalk and cheese, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the stuff, Joe, it's exciting as well. I mean, some of them go out on 48-sheet billboards, backs of buses. You'll be amazed where they end up, the images. And it's great to see them being used as well. But they've got to be used in context. And in that environment, you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful what you show and what you don't show, more importantly. You've got to show the good side of the service. I know some publications would love to get their hands on images which are less visually attractive, shall we say. So you've got to be careful what you show. And patient confidentiality has got to be top of the list as well. You've got to protect them in all instances. I mean, everything for the shoot of the air ambulance has to actually go back to them to be approved before publication. and they also have to get further permissions for anybody involved. Certainly the Southwest Ambulance Trust, and any people that are in the pictures as well. So it's all protected, and it's all done in the absolute best possible way we can do it.
Oh, the ethics of these things are so important. You don't want to be taking advantage of some poor soul who's comatose in the back of the helicopter being rushed off to try and save their life. I think there's would be situations where you might think, yeah, this is a great story, but that's where you need to exercise that little bit of judgment and realize that not everything needs to be photographed.
I've been involved with their ambulance services, Joe, would you believe, for 20 years now.
Wow.
Going right back to 2004. I was first introduced to Northwest Air Ambulance CEO by the sales staff of it, Auto Trader, of all people. Yeah. And it was an event which was run in Liverpool. So we were putting the motor show together. And one of our sponsors was Auto Trader. And they came to me and they said, look, Fiat have given us a car, which we're going to raffle and raise funds for the Northwest Air Ambulance. And we'd like you to be our partner in that. So we did all the marketing for it. We were helping with ticket sales. And that was my first introduction to an air ambulance service. And then from there, I started doing events for them. I was shooting brochure work, and it just rolled on and on and on. And Wiltshire Air Ambulance, the service I've been working with for 5 years now, and that's gone really quick as well. So we did an initial photo essay with them. Then I did a big COVID one. During COVID, because I'm a UK press card holder, I was allowed to go out and still work, although there wasn't much work about. So during lockdown, if I got pulled up, I'd produce my card, and we're absolutely fine. You're entitled to be out. And one of the things I was covering a lot was the NHS stories, the hospitals and stuff. And the thought just crossed my mind. I thought, what are the air ambulances doing? So I got in touch with Air Ambulance in Wiltshire, had a good chat with them. Their landscape of funding had totally changed. The charity shops couldn't open, didn't have people doing skydives and all these activities. So they were under a bit of pressure, and also their own operating procedures had changed. They had to fit a perspex panel in the camera in the helicopter to keep the cockpit separate from the patient's area in the back.
Oh, that's all good.
Yeah, they were wearing masks and so many different procedures they were doing. So I said to them, look, I think we should do a photo essay and get this out, because people don't know what you're doing. Their landscape of calls had changed as well. They were getting a lot more accidents in the home, obviously, because everyone's at home. RTAs had dropped because nobody was going out. So went down there. I self-isolated for a week before I went to see them. And then I attended the airbase and got all my COVID checks done by one of the doctors. I know it was clear to go. So we entered airside then. And then I stayed airside for 3 days, actually slept on the site to try and minimise bringing any infection in. We shot a load of stuff, and it was great. And it turned out, in retrospect, that I was the only photographer that flew and worked with an air ambulance service during COVID times. And that work now stands testament to what those folks went through for future generations, in 10 years, 20 years. If people want to look back, they've got a good reference of what took place. And obviously we put the pictures out as well. They went out into the press, and we used quite extensively. And certainly in terms of fundraising, Joe, you might think that the big national papers are the ones what you go for, but in reality, it's the local press that you want, because that was your fundraising area.
Well, local press relate to local stories, don't they? So
absolutely, yeah.
If a local person has had their life saved, they're 5 miles down the road from you. It has that much more impact often than thinking, oh yeah, someone at the other end of the country. And it just shows how, as photographers, we are storytellers, and that if we have a passion, then we can help them with telling their story like that. And these photo essays that you've done have been your way of being able to give back with that. So how can people actually see some of these photo essays that you've done? Where's the best places to go and look?
I've got some online on my website, www.terrydonnelly.co.uk. I should do better with that, though. I should put more content on and keep it more updated. Certainly a Google search, ambulance Terry Donnelly, you'll see them, still online in press and online news agencies. And certainly come to an event. I'm actually just going to put a submission in to attend convention, actually, and we're going to be covering ambulance work from terms of working with them, shooting with them, and what's entailed, and the reasons why we do what we do. So that might be something that anyone going to convention in January would like to come to attend to.
Yeah.
It's really important, Joe. We'll just finish on the air ambulance by saying, with these critical care doctors on board now on the cruise, when you think back, I don't know if you're aware of where the ambulance actually originated from. They started life working with the police and the police helicopters. When the police helicopters thought it'd be a good idea to occasionally have a paramedic on board with them when they're going out to road traffic accidents, etc.
Oh, right.
So they started doing that service, and then it grew and grew, and eventually, somebody said, well, we need our own service, really, because it's working with the police is okay, but it's quite constrictive. Where if they've got their own ambulance service, they can be flying out to missions themselves. And that's where it came from and where it grew. And quite early on, it was all about stabilising the patients and getting them to hospital, to an ER room as soon as they can. But we're bringing on the critical care doctors now on board. It actually means that critical care doctor can give full ER room medical attention actually on site, wherever they are, whether it's in somebody's house, the side of a road, wherever it will be. They're actually bringing the ER to the patient and getting the patient further down the care line. Because those first moments, the first minutes are the most important in saving somebody. And it's a great thing what to do. And they're really pushing the envelope with this to, make that service the best it can be for people.
Is this something you put on your social media channels at all? Is that something that people can follow on there?
Yeah, I'm a bit hit and miss on social. I tend to have little forays of activity, and then I don't go on for a short while. But yeah, certainly my socials are Terry Donnelly 01 on Instagram and Twitter. I just find the socials take me a lot of time to do, Joe, and sometimes I just don't have the time to do it.
Tell me about it. Yes, yeah. Quite right. I think it's nice for people to be able to follow your work, and they've got places now that they can go to follow up on these stories and things. So, remind us of your website. You've got a personal website and a commercial one, haven't you?
Yeah. So, my personal website is terrydonnelly.co.uk. As I mentioned earlier, I've split the architectural work away from that, and that's got its own dedicated website, which is terrydonnelly.co. And as I say, socials, Terry Donnelly 01. And that's it really, Joe. That's my online presence.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah. So if our listeners would like to find out any more and see some of Terry's imagery, please do go and take a look at that. And hopefully this has helped to sort of fire up your interest in your own passion, to see how you could contribute, what you could do as a photographer to tell somebody's story in a positive way. So it's been really interesting having you on as a guest, Terry. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your work with the listeners. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
No, it's been great to be on, Joe. Thank you very much for inviting me along.
And thank you everybody for listening. This is the Focused Professional Podcast.
Get connected, trained, supported and qualified with the Society of Photographers, sponsors of the Focused Professional Podcast.